Well, it's martini time, Sunday afternoon. I hope you've had a nice afternoon. And every day for martini time, it's really a throw up what we're going to talk about. And today, I asked my frog. You see my little frog here? As we talked about this one day, about the frog as a threshold guardian, and if you want anything, an idea or a treasure, an idea or an inspiration, ask the frog and he'll go into the unconscious and come back up with a golden ball, which is a treasure or the idea or the insight you need. So when I need an insight, I ask a frog. And what was the insight today? What? I decided to talk about Hotei, H-O-T-E-I. We've seen these little Buddhas around, and so I thought, well, let's talk about Hotei. You know, you got a little fat little belly, and a lot of times you rub the belly for good luck. I have a little Buddha on my front porch where you rub the belly. I say, I have a little sign there that says, rub the belly for good luck. And people come to the house and they rub the belly. And there's a standing Hotei, and here's a seated Hotei. And I talked about this Buddha. I call this the Buddha of the landfill because I found him in a landfill and had to buy him from the landfill guardian who weighed everything that went in, you know. And so we weighed it and figured it was worth $40. So I gave him. So anyway, I got a bargain, don't you think? I mean, oh, you can't see it. Oh, there. The detail is just fantastic. But, yeah, so who is Hotei? And here's the little ones. I usually, sometimes if I go to gift shops and I see these little Hotei, I'll buy a bunch of them. And then I have them here. And then when somebody comes and we make a connection, I'll give them a Hotei. And I have a funny story about that because back 10 years or so ago, maybe, I got into a opinion war on the local newspaper. This was before Facebook and the internet and all that. So if you wanted to get an argument with somebody, you'd get an argument on a newspaper in the local, in the comment column. So I had one going with a local Christian expert, a really nice lady who had written some books. She was an authoritarian. She really had a lot of knowledge on Hebrew and the text, and she was an authority. And so we got into a little online or newspaper battle about yoga versus Christian. You know, it was that's good. And so she came to my house one day with a bag of books and stuff, and sat down to kind of beat me with the Bible a little bit, you know, and make me go straight. And so at the end of the session, my wife really got irritated. And she said, can I come back? And I said, well, no, you can't come back, but you can if you leave your agenda. And she said, well, I can't do that. So I said, but before you go, I said, here. And I held out the little Hotei like that, you know. She's and she almost ran out of the house. So if you want to scare away the Christians, get a Hotei. But anyway, let's talk about the Hotei. There are several interesting, when you pull this apart, you know. Well, first of all, he is a Chinese monk, Hotei, the 10th century or something, and he was an enlightened being, and he went around with a sack, and it was like whatever you needed, he'd take it out and give it to you from the sack. And of course, he was always laughing and joyous, so he made everybody joyous. And he was like the happy wanderer, a stick with a sack on it, you know. And he had a fan, and in Chinese, the fan was used by the aristocrats to bestow a favor on you. So if the fan was used to bestow grace or favor, you see. So Hotei was kind of like that kind of thing. And the fat little belly, I mean, Santa Claus has a fat belly. When I had a guru, an Indian master guru, he had a little fat belly, and everybody said, well, it was full of energy, full of prana. And so since my belly got fat, I'm kind of happy. I said, well, it's just full of prana. Don't mess with it. But there's another interesting thing too. See, the Buddhism came to China from India. Okay, it migrated from India through these masters, these Buddhist masters. But in India, the gods looked like this. You see, in China, they looked like this. So it was really interesting that when Buddhism came to China, with all of its abstract gods and metaphysics and mythologies and all that, the Chinese, being very practical people, made all the gods in human form. So all the deities became human form. You see, so this is why, in India, in Southeast Asia, the Buddha would look like this, you see, which is kind of abstract, aloof, detached, withdrawn soul, you see. And in China, it looks like that, you see. Very touchable, very human, and very an end history, end time. So you have these two ends of the stick here. In India, the goal was to be out of time, to transcend history, for the soul to lift up to heaven, pure, to get rid of the earthly flesh, to get rid of the sin, to get rid of the obstacles, to become clear as crystal, like a monad, was to free the soul. And we have all this in our West too. The whole idea of Christianity is to free the soul of sin, and merge with God, But in India, all of this philosophy and this urge to get free from the weight of history and sin and time and pain and suffering, and to be resurrected, you see, and to become free. All these elements are there. But in China, they brought this down to earth, you see, and so God walked on earth, in the human form, and this was the evolution of Indian Buddhism to Chinese Buddhism, which evolved into Zen. So you have, and there it took root, but Buddhism could not stay rooted in India, so it's pretty weak there. But it grew in China and Japan and Southeast Asia and Ceylon. And now it's growing in America. It's taking root in America because it has human form, and it walks on earth, and it touches, and it laughs, and it's engaged in the world. The Buddha in China and Japan achieves enlightenment, but then comes back. That's the Bodhisattva. Mahayana Buddhism was the Buddhism that evolved or was born in around the time of Christ. Before that, the Hinayana Buddhism was ascetic. You had to become a monk and withdraw from the world, and withdraw from sex, and have a drink, and don't eat meat, and asceticism, and the world is sin and heavy, and withdraw, and pain and suffering. Disengage. Well, the Mahayana Buddhism that was then exported through the Himalayas, along the Silk Trail, and going to China, took root in China, then became like yogurt. It took on the flavor of China, and then Zen, and then moved to Japan, where it flourishes today, and now it's moved to America. It's come to America from two sides, Tibet and Japan. After World War II, America went to Japan and discovered Zen, Alan Watts, etc., etc. And China When China came down on Tibet, boom, all the monks and all the wisdom went out like mercury into the West. Shogrum Trungpa escaped from China, from Tibet, and went to England, then came to America and brought Tibetan Buddhism to America. So these two strains of Buddhism are coming in from opposite directions. But they're all very human, you see. They're not about abstract metaphysics and deities in the sky and leaving the world and go sit in a monastery, you see, and disengage. It is all about engagement, all about being in the world, being enlightened in the world, being free in the world. That the world, this material world, is what we have to work with. We can't leave it. We can't disengage from it. We have to engage with it. But how do we engage with it so that we can engage with it and be free at the same time? That's the question. That's the question, you see. So it's not about being enlightened or getting to heaven after you die. It's about getting to heaven while you're alive and making this earth your heaven. But as long as heaven is put off until later, to the future, the present moment is hell. You see the difference? If you split heaven from hell, then you got hell now and heaven later. And we live that way. When I get that car, I'll be in heaven. When I get that relationship, I'll be in heaven. When I retire, I'll be in heaven. Ha! And then finally, when I die, I'll be in a better place. So we just keep kicking heaven down the road, you see. But in the meantime, we're in hell, which means everything irritates me. I'm annoyed. I'm just not settled, you see. I'm just not content. I'm not satisfied. Something's missing. You see, something is missing. What is it? You see, so we're just nervous, energy, something's missing. So we don't really, we're split, you see. The present moment is hell, and tomorrow is heaven. And that's the way we live. We think that's normal, you see. But it's all a big conditioned assumption that the present moment, this present life, this present world is not already perfect, is not already heaven. And this is where the Buddhism, when it came into China and Japan, really brought heaven down to earth. And in Zen, it's all about just this. It's all about the perfection of just this. It's all about the perfection of earth, the perfection of our relationship with earth and other people and society, and just being perfectly at one with it, at one-ment. And there we are with atonement again, at one-ment. And we were talking about in the last few days, when I've been talking about, I had the sword and the dragon lighter of my father, and we talked about atonement with the Father, and the Father is a metaphor for the world. And so we keep coming back to this idea of atonement or being at one with our world. And that's not the external world out there, but it's the revolutionary idea that you are the world and the world is you. And if you want to be at one with the world, you have to be at one with yourself. And if you want to be at one with yourself, you have to be at one with this present moment, which we find is always irritating or dissatisfying or needs something else. It needs a little more spice. It needs a little more eroticism. It needs a little more sugar, a little more salt, you see. It's never quite right, you see. So we're always fiddling with it. We're always trying to make it better. Oh, it could be better than this, even though it was a perfect meal. Well, we could have added a little sugar over there and this needed some herbs over here, you see. So we're always comparing the present moment with the heaven that we can imagine. So it's always coming up short. It's always coming up short, you see. But this is not the way the world is. This is the way our minds work. And it works in our society very well because it makes us buy stuff. We're always buying stuff that will make us satisfied because this isn't quite right. everything is, well, it could be a little better. And then the next best thing comes out, wow, let me buy that. That'll make it all right. This isn't quite right either. It just, crapped out on me, So it's always, you really have to see that this is the way we're being driven, in this traffic jam of life, we're being driven along these corridors, along this waterbed of dissatisfaction. The river of dissatisfaction creates a consumer society, which is always trying to consume to get out of the dissatisfaction of what you just ate. It's all very simple. There's nothing wrong with the consumer society. There's nothing wrong with this. You just have to understand it. You have to understand the water before you can swim in it and don't drink it. You can swim in it, but you don't have to drink it. You see? Let that be our martini for the day, okay? And I'll see you tomorrow.